Hi, I'm Paul Trudell,
I'm Garrett Horrocks.
and welcome to Hull and Estates. You're listening to episode number 562, one of the last episodes of the year, and the year went by quickly.
It did.
Sure did. In light of the fact that we're into the holiday season and the time for gifting, we thought we'd talk about a case that deals with the issue of gifting. It's a Pecore type decision, and it deals with ownership, beneficial ownership of joint bank accounts. And we see a lot of these cases. I think this case that we're going to talk about, the Tiedemann decision, is a very good analysis of the type of evidence that you need. It goes through Pecore and has an excellent summary of the findings of Pecore and the takeaways from Pecore and an application of those.
Right, so this decision is one of the first decisions of a string of decisions that came out a few months after the Pecore decision. This decision came out in 2008, but it's helpful to the extent that can help us sort of return to the basic principles of the Pecore decision and other principles that the court set out in that decision, but which may not be discussed nowadays. They're kind of lost. They've been lost in the discourse.
Right.
So it's helpful to kind of revisit that and get back to basics.
Back to basics, and it's a great exposition of the basics, and it sets those out clearly and concisely. Just to touch on the facts, this was a joint account case. The deceased died. He died leaving a son, Kenneth, and he had a sister, Erica, as well. Kenneth was the sole beneficiary of the deceased's estate, and Erica, the sister, held the joint account with the deceased at the time of his death. The question was whether the joint account would pass to Erica by way of right of survivorship, or whether it passed to her, but she held it in trust for the estate, and therefore the proceeds would go to Kenneth.
Right. So the court focused a lot on the nature and the extent of the evidence that could be helpful in reaching a conclusion with respect to a resulting trust analysis. So in this case, the court, first of all, there was an employee of the bank who gave some very helpful testimony to the extent that they explored the intention of the deceased in opening this joint account. So it was clear that the joint account was open to the extent that he wanted his sister to assist with the payment of bills, because there was some disagreement as to whether the relationship with his son had been fractured and whether the son was an appropriate individual to manage his finances. My understanding, he didn't have a power of attorney in place, and his sister resided only a few hours away. So the testator wanted some assistance in managing his finances, and the sister was a good candidate. So it was clear from the evidence that the testator opened the joint account and named the sister as a joint holder to assist with the payment of his bills and the upkeep of his finances in the absence of a power of attorney.
Right, and there was some discussion that it may or would pass to Erica upon her death, but there was no further exploration or evidence from the bank employee as to whether the deceased intended that even though it passed to Erica, that it would be a gift to Erica, or that she'd be entitled to keep the beneficial ownership of that.
Right.
I think the Erica in this case seems to have relied on the fact that there was a joint account and would pass to her by right of survivorship, and didn't present any other evidence of the intention of the deceased with respect to whether it was to be held by her in trust or whether it was to actually be gifted to her. And in absence of that evidence, the presumption applied.
Right. So this case is also helpful to the extent that it explores a little bit of the difficulty in having a layperson analyze the concepts of legal versus beneficial ownership. So Erica's position was that she was entitled to the account, so therefore she would obtain the proceeds by right of survivorship on death. Unfortunately, the court in Pecore obviously clarified that to the extent that you have to perform the analysis of presumption resulting trust. My apologies.
Right. No, that's right. I think that the court said clearly here you need something more than simply being on the joint account. You need to have some evidence of an intention to gift at the time the joint account was set up, and that just didn't exist here, or wasn't found here.
Right. It was quite plain from the testimony given by the employee at the bank that there was no intention to gift, and even the defendant admitted that there was no intention to gift. She thought it was simply sufficient.
Automatically, right?
Yeah, she thought it was sufficient that she was a joint account holder, that it would pass to her. But unfortunately, there's a little bit more nuance to that analysis in light of Pecore.
Right.
And again, it's helpful to go back to the basics to the extent that, again, some of this is lost in modern discourse, especially with respect to the evidence that could be led. So the court also focused considerably on the nature and type of evidence They focused on the contemporaneity of the execution of bank documents, for example. The court specifically said if there are any relevant bank documents, they shouldn't be excluded, especially if they go towards the testator's intention.
But in this case, there were bank documents that said it would pass to the survivor. However, it didn't go further and indicate whether that was something that can be kept by the survivor or was gifted to her. There's a very useful summary or setting out of the various points to be taken away from Pecore. There's 17 bullets that the judge has that sets out, the different tests, the timing of the intention, the balance of the onus and the level to which the evidence must be presented, and the balance of probabilities when the presumption comes into play. So I think it's a useful discussion from that point of view.
Right. It certainly it's a much easier case to digest, or much simpler case to digest than Pecore. So I think to the average lay person, it's helpful to kind of digest these concepts and
I think if you're explaining the test in Pecore to a client or to the court, I think this case is a very useful one because of its very concise summary of the points to be taken from Pecore and the type of evidence to be taken or to be used in questioning what the intention of the deceased was at the time of the gift.
Right. So in light of this holiday season, please be very considerate about your intention to gift.
Very good. Good. Well, thank you for listening. And if you have any comments, please email us at webmaster@hullandhull.com or leave us a comment on our blog. And have a very happy holiday and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Paul.
Thank you.